In the parable, the one son that the father actually chases after is the one who thinks that he's doing all the right things, but he's actually keeping himself from experiencing the goodness of the Father. I, at a very early age, had a very genuine relationship with God, I felt, and I knew that I loved Him, I wanted to serve Him, and the most important things in my life at that time were my family and the church. And my mother in particular was a very important spiritual influence in my life. As life does, and when it throws you curveballs, it was kind of tough when she took me one day in a car ride and she told me that she was going to divorce my dad. And I remember looking out the window and thinking two things. I remember thinking, I'm on my own now. I don't know why. and number two, I'm not going to ever give up on God. And I don't know if it was like a self-fulfilling prophecy or just the uncanny sense of a 12-year-old, but that's pretty much how it went. I tried to be the best Christian I could be, the best person I could be, the best son, the best brother I could be, the best friend, all these things. There were times when it was difficult because my mother left the church, and I remember having these arguments with her because it was so hard for me to give up anything that meant so much to me as a child. You know, this genuine experience that I had that, you know, I gained through my mother that was now totally set aside, it felt like, by her, that was discounted, it wasn't real. And so I kind of remember fighting for it and fighting with her about it. We continued to grow apart as I went off to school. I went to a boarding academy through high school. My first semester of college is when life threw another curveball. I was told a week after Thanksgiving that my mom had committed suicide. I was the last person actually to see my mother alive because when I went home for Thanksgiving, I didn't really have a home because she'd moved in with someone else. And she was trying to pull me into her life and doing all the things to make me feel welcome, but I didn't really want anything to do with it. And so I also didn't treat her very nice. And I had this bit of guilt about that I couldn't deal with at the time. It would make things harder to cope with. So again, I threw myself into trying to study and figure out, I had to answer this question now. What is it about life that makes it worth living? How can I live this Christian life in a way that has meaning? And so I really dug in the next year and a half into reading the Bible, reading Ellen White. I did a lot of look into salvation and how it works. And I really put some effort into trying to be a good Christian, trying to do the right things. The summer, about a year and a half after my mom passed away, I got into call portering. It was this program where they take kids in the summer and we go door to door selling books. And as I was doing this, I came across the gospel message in pretty much the exact same words I had always heard of it before, but in a way I never understood it. And I began to understand how important it was to know God and what He's done for me, and not so much on what I could do for God. This is where it ties into the parable of a man with two sons. In that parable, we always think about the prodigal son. He waited as the prodigal left and He gave him his space. He didn't chase him per se, but He was always there for him. But the second son was the one who was always close and always thought he was doing the right things. He was always available and trying his best to be a good son. But if you notice, by the end of the parable, he's the only son that doesn't come home. In the parable, the one son that the father actually chases after is the one who thinks that he's doing all the right things, but he's actually keeping himself from experiencing the goodness of the Father. The one who's trying so hard is the one who never comes home, who stays at an arm's length. The Father actually seeks him out. I didn't have a lot of miracle stories or even spiritual aha moment stories. I had a life of trying to do what is right. in my 12-year-old mind, to never give up on God, to be the tough guy, to be strong. It was never really about things that I was doing. It was always about God never giving up on me. When I was so caught up in my own life and the things that were happening to me and the things I thought I had to do, I was way off base. I was always close to home, but never quite there. But Jesus always came out for me, He gave me freedom from myself. He gave me freedom from needing to be this, needing to be that. So much of my life before was a Christian walk without power because I was trying to generate that power. But when you realize that the God of the universe cares about you enough to put the whole universe at risk to come and get you, that's power. That's power for living. That's power for treating other people well too, because He did that for others. If the person you're looking at next to you is worth the life of God, then you're going to treat that person differently, right? If you realize that you are worth the life of God, you're going to treat yourself differently. When you realize that God has done everything, that His hand is not short to save, even you, when you feel like you're the worst person that you could possibly be, when you feel like you knew God was good once and you still went away and you realize it again and you come back, He's still going to be waiting for you no matter how many times it is for you. That is a power for living that you can't find in anything else. Not knowledge alone, not by anything that you can do, but just the knowledge that the love of God is that deep and that strong for you. My name is Michael Benggon, and this is my story.